I'm Peter Doyle, I'm a military historian at London South Bank University.
And I'm Jamie Pringle, I'm a senior lecturer in geosciences at Keele University.
So we're here really to consider the events of 1940. What we're looking at is the fact that the German army was intending to invade Britain following the disaster at Dunkirk. And the principle here is what would happen if those Germans invaded? How would they invade? They would land on those beaches, and of course they would then progress inland.
They can't have built that in a year.
These maps form part of the German invasion plans. Principally this is military geography, that's what it's referring to. So the Germans had a really incredible organisation which looked at every aspect of the geography of where they were going to invade, and these plans would have been in the hands of those men as they came across on their boats to England in order to try and invade and to understand what was going on over the ground. There's London, this is the target, and the British constructed what's known as the GHQ, or General Headquarters Lines. And what they were major barriers to stop the German tanks and the Germans invading to the north and to the west. And what we've got here is a river which joins onto the Thames. There would have been a protective line of the rivers, of the concrete fortifications all the way through, and then it would follow this river right the way up to the Wash. Again, a major barrier there, so if there was any invasion this would be linked with pillboxes and fortifications, and then further up the eastern counties. But inside that line there were also some secret armies that were being built, and one of them, the auxiliary units. These were men who were used to the land, used to living off the land and using firearms, and they were secretly recruited and given the mission of actually being underground and capable of coming out of the bunkers and holes in the ground to attack the Germans once they'd invaded. And the principle here is that they would try to create havoc amongst the German invaders. They would sabotage areas, they would sabotage arms dumps, they would sabotage anything that was of value to the Germans, and they would be trained as assassins. They would assassinate any of the senior officers that were in and around the region. These were men with deadly intent. They were armed to the teeth. They were armed with commando knives. They were issued the knives before any commandos ever had them. They were issued with pistols. They were issued with gelignite and with plastic explosives, and they knew exactly how to use them.
It's still not officially recognised, these activities that Peter's been talking about. The records aren't really there. There's a few isolated biographies of people who were directly involved. Sadly they've all died now. So these men actually hand dug underground bunkers to store this equipment, and where they were going to actually stay when the initial wave of the invaders would go through, and they would then pop up after they came and do their various activities that Peter's described. So obviously they're not on any official maps. We don't know where they're located. And so they're quite hard to find. So we've done some research to try and work out where they could still be now, particularly here in Suffolk where we're located. So we found out where 3 might still be around now. 1 was destroyed, 1 was partially intact, and where we are now there's a really well preserved one behind where I'm standing.
Most of them, we believe, were destroyed, and so to actually find physical evidence of these things, where these men would have hung out, would have actually launched their attacks and emerged in the dead of night in order to carry out these attacks, this is actually something really special and quite incredible to have the opportunity to find.
This bunker we're looking at now, we had a rough idea where it might be located. We talked to the local landowner, and he said, oh yes, there's something there, but I'm not sure what it is. So we actually came and did some reconnaissance here, and we said, right, well, what methods can we use to find them? So you can see some little bits of instruments in here. We've set up some survey lines over where we think might be where it is, and then we use some basic surveying equipment, so both to survey this ground surface to see if there's like a little lump or a bump where it might be, and we also use some geophysical instruments. So Chris, my colleague here, we're just doing a survey to see whether we can visualise what's under the ground, if it's higher or lower, which may be where the bunker might be. Okay, so this looks like it's the emergency access shaft. It's vertical, so it looks like it's how we might get into the bunker. How's that looking, Chris? You're down okay?
Yeah, it's a bit dark.
Looks like there's an entrance to go in. Okay, so we've just come down the exit shaft and we come into this bunker. You can see it's quite large. It looks like a Mark II, would you say, Peter? Yeah. I've got big corrugated iron with these bolts bolted together. And this, at the back here, we can see it's infill, but this would have been the original entrance shaft. It's obviously been collapsed or been deliberately collapsed. I think they tended to do that at the end of the wall. It looks like some sort of ventilation at the back here. But we do also have quite a lot of interesting artefacts. Do you want to say what this is, Peter?
Yeah, so I mean, interestingly enough, we've got artifacts of the residence of the men here, and it's kind of incredible to think that this would have been their life, and they only had 30 days worth of food in this location. So it was packed to the gunnels with ammunition, with weapons, and just sufficient food for them to hang out for that period of time. So this is real evidence of their existence here. We can see this would have been a lamp, and in fact, this is a candle. It's mouldy, it's manky, but what it represents is the lives of these men in absolute darkness in this subterranean chamber. The men who came here, they knew they had a deadly intent. There was really probably little chance that they might survive this act of sabotage or assassination. They came here knowing that they would have to commit these deadly acts. And of course they would say goodbye to their families knowing perhaps they'd never see them ever again and would not know probably what would have happened to them.
Okay, so these men are sort of colloquially called scallywags, so that's why we've called it scallywag bunkers. That's sort of, they're trying to live off the lands. They would only have a limited amount of food supplies because they think they'd only have a 12-day life expectancy for them should the invasion have happened. Some of them have dropped out, haven't they?
Yeah.
They dropped out, or they haven't cut them out. There would have been bunk beds in here, tables, chairs. We've got a stove down here to keep them warm as well. It's original. I'm not sure if it's in this position exactly, but it's a Valor kerosene number 56, I think, stove. So the men here would have used this to keep themselves warm. Would have been pretty cold. Imagine we're underground here in the winter. It's going to be pretty cold. So this is one of the methods they're going to use to keep themselves warm with. They would have had maybe 6 to 10 men down here, and there'll be a mix of people who are really expert knowledge of the local area, so people like poachers, gamekeepers, quite ironic both of them might be together, and people, and obviously they have those skills that we've talked about already. They're great there.
They are great.
I'm grateful.
And it was really important also that they had a rum ration. This was something akin to the men in the trenches, to give them energy, to give them enthusiasm perhaps for battle. And it was a gallon jar of rum that those men would take sips from, take drinks from, and maybe that was their only chance of any kind of respite from this fear perhaps of what they had to do. This bunker is pretty much a unique survivor. The Royal Engineers were charged to destroy them after the war. So any that survive give us a real indication of what it was like for those men to live and hide out here.
So these bunkers form, although we're in Suffolk here, they went all the way down from Scotland, down the east coast to the south coast, and maybe the southwest coast as well. We don't know where they are. You may know where they might be, or maybe you may have a relative that may have been part of this in the past. So even though it's 80 years ago, we really don't know that much about it. That would be really interested to hear your thoughts, or if you have information to please get in touch.